Hello guys, how are you doing?
Hello, hello. Doing well.
Can
Hi,
you hear me
I'm
well?
yeah.
Yes.
Great, nice to see you. Take, we'll just wait a few minutes and then let's dive in. You two that you are here, are you already familiar with Dojo? Or it's like a very first introduction?
I'm not familiar with Dojo, but I am familiar with Rust and with game development.
Okay.
Uh, okay, for my case, I'm not really familiar with the game development, though I have just built the simple games using JavaScript. Dojo, I'm familiar with it. I was working with a friend to build some game on it, though I don't know where he is at right now because he was working on this specific portion of it while I was working on the front end portion of it.
Okay, well, that's good. Thanks for the update. Hello for those that are joining. So I think we will just try to start, and then if there is some question, etc., we'll just check after. I just want to make a brief introduction to what's Dojo, and I appreciate you took the time today to be there and to listen to that. So um, I will focus on some aspect of Dojo, but let's dive in. So what exactly is Dojo? So Dojo is like a community-driven open source provable game engine. So it's providing comprehensive toolkit for building verifiable games and autonomous worlds. So the good thing of Dojo is like there is already some studios building on the top of it. So here you have some examples of those studios that are using Dojo in production right now. And Dojo is open source, so there is a lot of contributions from the Starknet ecosystem and beyond to Dojo technical part. So there is a part about why Dojo is provable, but I wanted to focus on the toolchain side because at the end in the hackathon you want to build stuff. So I will focus on the toolchain mainly, but if there is some questions or if you have any other concern, just feel free after that to reach with some questions. So the tool chains can be composed in two things, like on-chain stuff and off-chain stuff. So let's start with the on-chain stuff first. So the toolchain is composed of several tools. The tools that you have in red here is part of the Dojo toolchain, which is the public and open source repository. We have Sozo, Katana, Tori, which are three binaries, and we have Origami, which is a library. I will just get more into details after that. And then you have cartridge services that can be used to ease your developments and how you can deploy and work with your deploy world. Okay, so which is slots and worlds. But we will get to this into detail. I just want you to have this overview of the toolchain tools. Okay, so what's exactly the architecture of Dojo? So basically, in Dojo, in the concept of autonomous worlds, you have a world which is like your main database, okay, and in this world you have some contracts where you will define some behavior, physics, token, games, governance, etc. And you will have some models, and those models will be the what will describe your data and how you will store them in the world. So how does it work? It's the world provides you like an interface for on-chain world. It's designed for composability and extensibility because it's the concept of autonomous worlds. You can register models to extend the data into your storage. You can deploy contracts to add logic. And then you have some ACL or model access control, which is you can decide who can write which data into the world. So how a model is represented in Cairo, because you are in a Starknet hackathon, so I suppose you are working in discovering or knowing a bit of Cairo. So basically a model is like a struct, and in this struct, you will define which data I can store inside. So here I have two fields, the player fields, which is decorated with a key attribute, which means, okay, the move struct data will be identified with a contract address, which is a player, okay? And then I have a field of data, which is remaining, and in this case, it's a byte. So what Dojo will do is when you will send this to the world, it will store the model data, which is remaining, using the key, which is player, okay? So once you have a key, you can then retrieve the data easily from the world. And how we can build logic around those models. So to build logic, we have the Dojo contracts. So Dojo is using the entity component systems, even if the models are the components. But the idea is you write a function, the function is considered to be a system, and this function will interact with the world. And the world, what you can do, well, you can set data and get data. And in the example you have here, it's like, oh, I will set data into my world. I will set the move model and the position model with some data in it. Okay, so basically, model is data and contract is how I can add logic around this data. I will skip the computer value for now. And then we have the toolchain off-chain part, because at the end, how everything works together. So if we take the server side of Dojo, you have Katana. You remember that we have several tools at the beginning. So Katana is a sequencer, and the sequencer is supposed to be like something that can be later proven exactly like Starknet and settle in a settlement layer. So this part here is not like extra relevant for you working today, but it's good to know that Dojo is aiming at targeting this architecture. So Katana is a sequencer. You have JSON RPC to communicate with a sequencer, and you have Tori, which is an indexer. So you spin up Tori, and then it will index your world that is deployed on Katana, okay? And then you have GraphQL, gRPC, and WebRTC interfaces that you can use to query your data from the clients. So Katana, as I mentioned, is like a sequencer. You can use it for testing, but it's also designed for high performances and gaming. So basically, you have a fast sequencer. You can send transactions that are almost instantly included. And then you can have a lot of functionalities that you have with Starknet sequencer. And the idea of Dojo is to propose you to scale your games, because when you have a toolchain, the idea is to go a bit beyond that just playing locally. You just want to go global. So the idea of fractal scaling with Katana and with Dojo toolchain is that you have several players. Each players can play in a dungeon or can have an instance of the game in their Katana instance. So for instance, here you have two Katana instances. You have one which is spin up only for the dungeon. And then you have these capabilities of like merging those states and settling on Starknet and finally on Ethereum. Okay, so just keep it in mind, because at the end, even if it's on-chain stuff, it doesn't mean it will not be scalable. And yeah, and everything on the sovereign rollup, as we mentioned earlier. So the Tori server, which is the one which is responsible of indexing everything from Katana. So the good thing of Tori, it's stateless, verifiable, and then you have all the types are stored on chain. So Dojo is using an introspection system, which means Tori doesn't need to ask Katana from some types. It just fetch everything from the chain. Okay, so you spin up Katana, you spin up Tori, and Tori is able to index everything there. And what about the client side? So do you remember that we were on the server side before? So when you make a game on the JavaScript side or front-end side, so you have your game is using a SDK, which can be Unity, Phaser, React, etc. And then you can just talk to Tori to get exactly the state of your world. You don't have to directly ask to Katana and to fetch stuff in Katana. Tori is formatting and gathering all the data for you, and then you can ask to Tori about the data of the world directly. So Tori client side, yeah, so efficient, portable. There is WASM implementation and now more support of that. So it's very interesting how portable Tori can be. And then there is some vision for Tori for optimistic private types, etc. So you remember that we talked about the toolchain with Katana, Tori, etc. But you also have the cartridge side. So Slot is a service that cartridge proposed. So if you want to deploy your work very easily in the cloud, you can just use Slot, which is free for now. So it means you don't have to have your own server with Katana setup and Tori setup, etc. You can just use Slot, and in few seconds you can deploy Katana, you can deploy Tori. They are matched together, and then you can just access your data from this server that you can control. Well, for this instance of Tori and Katana that you can control. So yeah, so Slot is like managed infrastructure from cartridge. You can spin up Katana and Tori. Regional deployment that is coming. So it means depending on where you are in the world, you can just spin up something close to you. And then there will be support for settlement and the scaling that we see earlier. And finally, I wanted to present to you the World Explorer. The World Explorer, which is, I will give you the link just after that, is like where you can submit your world details and then you can share with people what exactly your world is about, and you will have automatically your transaction indexed, etc. So that's a good product that Cartridge is trying to develop to like having people discovering the games of others in a very easy manner. So I will share in the chat the link to this one. And yeah, I think I wanted to make a brief introduction of the toolchain, so we can go in details if you have questions, etc. But the idea is, yeah, being able to build games very quickly with Dojo. And yeah, I think that's it for the presentation right now. So just let me stop sharing the screen. I was sharing the screen, right? Yeah. Yep.
Yes.
Yeah, I don't know why I cannot just remove it, but I think it's fine. Okay, so yeah, so this is the idea of Dojo. I can actually, so my screen is still visible right now. Yeah, better. So yeah, so I don't know if there is some question, some question or some part that you have, guys, about the first presentation.
How many games have you got in how many words have you got in Starknet now?
Right now on Starknet mainnet, there is one world, which is the world of Brick. They are using it for also NFT and collectionable purposes, and also gaming experience that they will bring. So in mainnet, there is one, I think, well, at least from the knowledge I have right now. And then there is some of games that is developed from Realm, from Cartridge. So let me see. Where's the dev? If there is right now, because words.dev is something that is being actively developed right now. So yeah, for here, for instance, there is some four that were here, but let me go to patris.gg, where you have some some games that were here. So you have, yeah, Roll Your Own, Loot Survivor. Oh no, that's right. There is Loot Survivor also, which is in mainnet in Starknet. So yeah, you have like, I think like 10 or something like this. But yeah, it's still a little amount of games right now.
Okay. So mostly NFT games or something about DeFi too?
Yeah, I don't. It's mostly games. I don't think DeFi right now is using it a lot. But the idea of Dojo is like, once you get the way models and systems work, you can pretty much extend it, yeah, very easily for other purposes. But the main focus is, yeah, about games. That's correct.
Okay, thanks for the link.
You're welcome. So yeah, so if you want, I will just go through. If there is no more question right now, Tech, I will just send you also the Dojo engine link. So the idea of Dojo. Oh, there is a question. Looks good. Okay. So the idea of Dojo is that you can set up the toolchain very easily. So you just use this script bash and Dojo app, and then you have the toolchain installed. And when you work with Dojo, so as you probably see if you went around the documentation, Dojo is using its own compiler. Okay, so I don't know if you are very familiar with Starknet right now, but the idea with Dojo is that the compiling stuff is already included in the toolchain. Okay, so if I go in the different toolchain, we have different tools that we have seen before. So we have Katana, which is a sequencer. We have Tori, which is the indexer. And we have Sozo, which is we can say the compiler. So you use Sozo to compile your code, but Sozo is also here to make the migrations. So it means if you have your world, you make some changes to your code, you just hit Sozo migrates, and Sozo will take care of checking, oh, which contract has changed, which model has changed, and then it will push it on chain. So it's interesting how it works, and it's good if you take a look at Dojo to just be familiar with this toolchain, because at the end we try to provide something all in the box, like you can just use and go straight away to develop your games. So if there is a question, just don't hesitate.
So Sozo is like a smart contract utility.
Yeah, you can see it like this. Yeah, you can see it like this. But more, yeah, if you are making reference, for instance, to Foundry, which is something that is found is Ethereum and also is Starknet, is like it's not doing all the framework for testing or stuff like that, but it's like a compiler, but also a contract strategy migration for contract. Yes, 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 and it's like trying to abstract the fact that you are interacting with the blockchain. Because, for instance, let's say you have a system. Okay, a system is just a function in a Dojo contract. So usually, when you want to do something on chain, you send a transaction, right? But the idea with Sozo is like this can be abstracted. You can just hit Sozo execute, the name of the contract, the function you want to call, and everything is made under the hood by Sozo. So it's like, yeah, a toolbox for interacting with your contract and managing your deployments. Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
welcome. Okay, so don't know if there is some question here. I can just go a bit over how stuff works. Perhaps it will give you some insights about it. So the idea when you work with Dojo is you're writing some smart contracts, of course, but the idea is that you also have to handle those models. So remember, the models are the data, and the systems, which are functions, are the logic around the data. So when the world is deployed, you have the player, which is like in the client side. In the client side, you will invoke the system, which is a function. So you have to send a transaction, and anybody can send a transaction, and you can just configure exactly how you want your system to be exposed. When the transaction, the call is made to the system, then this will interact with the world. Okay, because you remember that the world is like your central database, your central contract, which is everything that is stored in the storage of the world. And every permission that you want to give to users is controlled by the world. So the world contract, you don't have to write it yourself. Dojo already automatically deploys the world. And you write the systems and the models to define, okay, this is the data that I want to store. This is a function that I want to use to interact with the world. And then the events are emitted. Sorry, get the events and then serve these events to your clients. So basically, when you are a client, usually you only work with Story, which is giving you all the information about your world in real time. So yeah, so this is architecture. As I mentioned before, let me just try to get an example here. So here in the screen, we have an example of what's a system. So a system, so this is a Starknet contract, okay? And as you can see here, we have a function. And this function is what is called a system. So the system will always know the world address, and we are working also to enhance the developer experience to have less like boilerplate code to write, and you can have everything set up very quickly. And the idea here is, as you remember, we have a model. So to interact with the model, as Dojo contains a compiler, there is a plugin to the Kero compiler. So it means there is some specific macro or commands, we call them, but I think we can rename it to macro, which are designed for Dojo. And with those macro, for instance, the get, which is here, is just saying, oh, you know what? I give you the world address, I give you the key, because you remember the model is identified with the key, and I give you the model that I want to retrieve. And this will call the world contract, get the data from the storage at the good location, and they will return you the data. And then you can do the opposite. You can use the set macro command just to insert data into your world. And remember, a model is always identified with keys. So you just have to pass the keys to know, oh, you know, this is the location on the storage that we want to use. And if you see here, there is no storage that is used in the common way on Starknet, because everything is handled by the world with a specific database design. So this is very easy, I would say, to just jump into it and use the macro commands that you have here to interact with the world. So if I get back to the model, for instance, so this is a simple model. So the key is the identifier that allows the world to know where in the storage it should look for your data. And then you can also have multiple keys, because sometimes it's very interesting to have some different patterns to identify your data. So you can have different keys, and then you can use, as we see before, the set macro command to set data, and then you can use the get. And if you have multiple keys, you just have to pass the keys, and the world will be able to retrieve the data for you. Okay. And let me see. Yeah, I think that is a good overview. So is there any question on what we just seen about the stack and some code? Not a lot of questions. That's fine. I will just follow up. Okay, so let's see now how we can use. Okay, so here I will just show you the basic flow to deploy something and to work. I think we could make also after that some demonstration if we have time. So the idea is, when you work with Dojo, for now there is no one command to start up everything. So this is something that perhaps will be added in the future. But for now, you have to handle the different PCs. So what are those PCs? The first one is Katana. So Katana, to remember, is like a sequencer designed for high performances and throughput for gaming. But you can also use Katana as a devnet, for instance, just to test your contract. But the idea is, like, you can use it very easily for Dojo. So Katana, you can just start it up without the fees, which remove the need of some controls on Starknet. And once Katana is deployed, the idea is what you should do. So remember, we have Sozo. So with Sozo, you can just make Sozo build, This will build all the contracts that are found in your repository. And then you can use Sozo Migrate. And Sozo Migrate is the one, as I mentioned before, that will be responsible to say, oh, what's changed in the world? And from that, I will know what I have to deploy and where, okay? And that's pretty much it. So this is the idea of the toolchain, is to be very easy and very quick for someone to just start working with that. I will give you a repository, which is Dojo Starter. I don't know Dojo Starter. Did it? Just refresh my navigate my browser so I don't have any links here. Let me just check here. Dojo Starter. If there is some question in the meantime, just feel free to interrupt me, please. Okay, so I will share with you guys the Dojo Starter repository. This is a repository where you will be able to find a very simple example of Dojo code. So just feel free to check it out. And what we can do is I will share my screen and we will go through like Dojo real use cases. Like this, you will be able to see in action. But once again, if there is some question, just feel free to interrupt me, guys. Okay, so let's setting up everything. Take this one. And can you write, people, if you can hear me and if you don't want to talk, it's okay. If anybody here has experience with Starknet or with Dojo Gaming, I know Jill and Dalmas already answered, but there is more people from the beginning. So just feel free to just write a little note on the chat. This will also give me some overview of who is in the audience, if you don't mind, guys. Okay, take. And if someone can just acknowledge that you can see my whole screen, it can be great.
Yeah, can see your terminal in the moment.
Yeah.
At the moment.
Yeah. Perfect. Thank you very much for acknowledging it. Okay, so let's just take this repository. Okay, and as I mentioned before, let's go through the regular installation flow. So we go in the Dojo engine, the link I sent you before. You just run this command, and this will install the latest version of Dojo. And to know the version that you install, you can run Dojo app, which is the script to install the version. And here we can see it's using the latest stable version. And here I have the version of all my tools. So once again, Katana, Sozo, Tori. And for those who are working with Visual Studio or any IDE that is using the language server, it's also bound to the version, bounded to the version. So let's go in the Dojo Starter repository. So as we mentioned before, it's like using the Starknet contracts architecture, but with the difference that we have to use the Dojo plugin. So if I go in the scar.toml file, which is a manifest, some interesting things happens here. So here we have the Dojo dependency. So this is a Dojo dependency to allow the Starknet contracts to be aware of the compiler plugin. Okay, and here you can see also, I don't know if you already written some Starknet contracts, but here you have some a different target which is specific to Dojo. And the cool stuff about Dojo is that you can also declare some information about the world that you are working on directly into the SCAR manifest. So this is a good way for you to have like a declarative manner to add data about your world and your work directly inside the repository. So here we can see the Katana RPC URL, which is a default one. And here we have the account address and the private key, which are the first account of Katana, okay? So this is for the manifest, SCAR manifest. Then let's go into the source directory. So into the source directory, we have, as always, a library, which is like handling the models and the modules. And then we have the systems and the models. So you remember that we have the models, which are the data, and we have the systems, which are the logic. So if we go into the models, for instance, let's go into the models. We have a model which is called move. So here we have a structure. The struct is defining our key here to say, oh, this is an identifier I will use to get my data. And this is my data that will be stored into the world. And as you can see here, you can declare and use any char struct and enumeration as usual, okay? And let's go into the system. So into the system, we have one system, which is called, we have one contract, which is called actions. And this contract, as you can see, have a Dojo decorator. The Dojo decorator is something that is used for the Dojo compiler to just inject some code that avoids you to write manually, okay? So here, interesting thing to see is that if I go here, I have an implementation of the interface. The interface is the one right here. So these are my systems. So I want this contract to implement a spawn system and a move system. So if I go to the implementation, this is what we call system, and this is where I will define how what is the logic around my data. Okay, so here we can see something that we have seen before in the documentation, in the presentation. We have the get macro or command that is used to get some data. So this is getting the position of this player, which is identified by the contract, which is calling the system. And then I can just set this data again with some modified data or whatever I want, okay? And here we have the second system, which is move. And yeah, you can see, and now I think you get the point. It is pretty straightforward now to use the models and how you can interact with them. Okay, so remember, when you use get, you are pulling data from the world. And when you use set, you are sending data to the world. And you can also emit your own events if you want. And the good point about that is like Dojo will be aware of that, the toolchain. So Tori will be able to index your events automatically. So this is also a good point about the toolchain. It's like you have everything, all the tools you need to work with smart contracts. So, okay, if you have some question on the code, I think not, but just feel free to interrupt me. So let's see how can we interact with this code. So as you remember, we have several tools. We have Katana, and we have Sozo, and then we have Tori, okay? So first, let's spin up a sequencer because we need to somehow having the sequencer running. So if I run Katana here, as you can see, Katana is showing all the configuration that he has. And here we can see what I mentioned before in the SCARB manifest. You have the first account of Katana, which is set up. So it means when you use Sozo, Sozo will check, like if you define some account, it can be in the command line, it can be environment variables, but it can also be in the SCAR manifest, okay? So it means if you don't do anything, by default, everything is set up, okay? So here I have my Katana, and let's go into the repository here. And here I can make Sozo build. Sozo build will fetch the code for the Dojo compiler and will compile the code accordingly, okay? So once it's compiled, everything is generated by the compiler into the target dev. And here you can see all the contracts that are compiled by the toolchain. And then, as you remember, in one command, Sozo migrate. This command is like, okay, let's migrate your world, declaring, deploying everything that is necessary for your world to be working, okay? So if I just hit Sozo migrate, as everything is set up into the scarp.toml, which is a scarp manifest, Sozo will use these accounts, and Sozo will start to see which contract is deployed, which contract is not deployed, which contract has changed, and make all the transactions for you, okay? So basically at the left, you can see Sozo building, and at the right, you can see Katana receiving all the transactions, okay? And here, so we have the executor-based contract world, which is something internal to Dojo. And then we have our two models that we have seen, the moves and the position models. And then we have our contract actions, if you remember, with the systems. And here the world is deployed and it's on Katana. Okay. So my world is deployed at this address. So if I hit Sozo migrate again, if I don't pass any address, well, Sozo migrate will say, oh, you know what? I will do it again because I don't see anything remotely. But if I pass the world address, Sozo will just fetch everything that it needs from the chain, which is Katana, and it will detect that there is no changes in this code. So there is no need to send transaction. There is no need to upgrade contract. Okay. By default, all the Dojo contracts are upgradable. So it means Sozo will always be able to upgrade the contracts accordingly to ensure the latest version is reflected on chain. So yeah, so as you can see here is like 2 commands and everything is set up right here. And then if we check the Tori command, everything is centric around the world. So how you can tell Tori to index stuff? Well, giving Tori the address of the world. So if we send Tori with a world address, Tori by default will use a Katana default URL, and Tori will just try starting to process some blocks and to index the data. And then it started a server that you can just start to play around with it, and you can start querying your data directly from Tori. Okay. I'm still not very familiar with GraphQL, but the idea here, you have like a playground, which is already here. And we could go deeper on that in the next session because it's already the end of this session. But this was to give you like an example of how easy it is to work with the toolchain with Katana, Sozo, Tori, and everything was together around the world address. So yeah, any question, any feedback, any comment, guys? Oh, I see now some question in the chat. So the models are contracts. Yeah, under the hood, when you have a model at the end or at the beginning, a model is just a struct, okay, that you define and you put the attributes on top of it, and then the compiler in Sozo then will generate a contract to describe your model. Yeah, that's correct. That's correct. But at the end, you interact as a user. You interact with the model like if it was a simple struct in Kera. Okay. Player simple interaction between the contract. Yeah. It's a Okay, can you take the microphone, Jill, and just explain a bit what you try to say in this one, please? Just to be sure I get you.
Just I have some experience with Rust, and I didn't catch up with your because there is a video tutorial in your YouTube. But I didn't see the video. I was waiting for this jump session. So the only thing that I have done is to collect a list of actions for interacting with the UI in Rust from Cargo, because I know Rust, I know Cargo, and I was trying to build up an idea of a game. Okay. There are a few libraries, a few packages, cargo packages to create UI, basic UIs for simple games. But from what I see here, you declare the interaction in the contract like objects, like structs.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. So I'm trying to catch up on your Rust idea, but basically your contracts, everything you write will be deployed on a sequencer. In the example I gave is Katana. It can be deployed on any Starknet sequencer, but the idea is like Katana is tailored for this experience. So once your contract is deployed, you have only one way then to interact with your contract is with the blockchain. Okay, so it's like using transaction or using call. But this is where Tori is very handy, because at the end, Tori is indexing everything and give you some endpoints to just query data. And then you can work in any client that you want. You can work with Rust, you can work with other languages, with other kind of frameworks.
Wow.
You see, so your entry point is not the contract directly, I would say. You would prefer to work with Story, which is giving
Okay.
you all the data.
I got you.
You see,
Okay.
so
Yeah.
yeah, so from here you can decide which of your language and everything you want to use, because Story is using very standard interfaces, as we see with gRPC, GraphQL, etc.
So
That
if I
yeah.
want to interact, for example, with a DeFi contract, I just establish 2 or 3 events in my contract that interact with the DeFi contract, and then I can elaborate. I can build up with Tori through the interface how the user will be interacting with those events, right?
Yeah, you have, yeah, Tori gives you data, and then if you need to make some actions into your contract, then you will have to send transactional stuff. So if you are in front end, you can use Dojo JS, which is like an abstraction on the top of Dojo, so you can keep working with the systems and the models very easily without having to make the low level code of transaction. You see, but yes, you're right. Every interaction with contract is made at the systems level, and then when you want to see the state of your world, you use Story, and when you want to alter the state of your world, you can send transaction in a raw format if you want, but you can also use Dojo JS or other Dojo SDK just to interact
And
easily with the system.
it's upgradable by default, which is the thing that I was
Yeah,
stuck on yesterday. So thank you very much.
yeah. No, you're welcome. That's great. Thank you for the
Okay.
question. Thank you. Kelly, will there be a session about how to interact with BE, which I suppose is backend from React app? That's a good point. Perhaps we can focus the next session of front end, or add more about front end interaction. That's a good point. We will definitely consider that. But if you reach out in the Discord, there is several resources around this. Let me see if in the Dojo book it's also here. Clients Dojo JS. Yeah, you can also find, let me see. Yeah, this is not up to date. I will definitely update those one and send it to you, Kelly, in the Discord or in the mentorship or Dojo Bounty, just to be sure you have access to the latest resources. But yeah, we can definitely try to focus a bit more on the front end in the next session. Well, thank you very much, guys. It's like 4 minutes. I know the bot will close everything automatically. So if you have any questions, just feel free to reach out on the Discord. It can be the Dojo Discord or the Starknet Hackathon Discord too. Just feel free to reach out, and we will try to be as reactive as possible. But I appreciate your time today and you being here, guys. Thank you very much.